Hello again, everyone. I'm Joe Longinusa, welcoming you to another edition of Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, the show where industry leaders, golf professionals, and legends all come and discuss the great game we love so much. So without further ado, let's turn it over to our host to tell us who's next on the tee. Chris, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me again on Next on the Tee. I am your host, Chris Mascaro, and this morning I am so excited to share three wonderful guests with you. First up, it's always my privilege to have the voice of golf, Peter Kessler, back on the show with me. Peter has become a wonderful friend and someone I have so much admiration for. He's interviewed just about every legend of the game from the 20th and 21st centuries. No one knows more about the history of the game than Peter does. I'll get his thoughts on this year's Open. We'll also see which one he believes are some of the most significant in the history of the game, and we'll hear who he thinks is going to come out on top this year at Chambers Bay. Peter's going to join me here in just a few moments. Following Peter is going to be 1991 Open champion and a guy who's doing a great job broadcasting tournaments every week on CBS, and that's Baker-Finch. I'll get Ian to take us through that magical week back in 91 at the Open when he finished with rounds of 64 and 66, highlighted by an amazing 29 on his outward half in the final round. I'll also get his favorites for the U.S. Open and what it's like being involved on the other side of the game, on the other side of the mic now, when Ian joins me about 20 minutes from now. And then I'm going to wrap up the show by talking with Bob Geismar. And Bob is the founder of One Thought Golf. Bob's not a proponent of beating balls on the range or really going to the range at all. He sees golf as a mental game, and that's where we should be preparing, in the mind. Well, we'll hear all about that when Bob joins me about 45 minutes from now. So it's going to be a great show, and I am so glad you are here to take the journey with me. Next on the Tee is brought to you by Seymour Putters. Let's hear a word from those guys.
Golfers, has this happened to you? Great drive, perfect second shot on the green, only to 3 or even 4 putt, shaking your head all the way back to the cart. I have good news. Help is on the way with the Seymour Putter. The Seymour Putter Company, patented RST technology, sets up the putter perfectly every time, using a visible gun sight on the top line. Genius. It's like locking radar onto the target, in this case, the golf hole, putting the golfer in perfect position to make a reliable and consistent stroke. The 1999 U.S. Open and 2007 Masters champions both use, you guessed it, the Seymour Putter. So if you're ready to make more putts and take strokes off your game, log on to Seymour.com. That's SEEMORE.com and put a Seymour putter in your bag today.
Like Joe said, check out the rifle scope technology that helped win 2 majors and 35 tour events and counting. And it's going to help you make more putts, too. I know it's helping me. I got to tell you, folks, I had 2 of the best putting rounds of my life a couple of weeks ago when I was on my golf weekend with my buddies. 55 putts over my last 2 rounds. Check them out online, Seymour.com. And again, it's SEEMORE.com, and get one in your bag. You're going to be very glad you did. I also want to give a shout-out to our new friends over at Allen Edmonds. The shoes of great leaders, from the Oval Office to corner offices, the stage and screen, and promising cubicles all around the country, are a part of what make people successful. The right footwear is important on the carpets and the hardwood floors of the global economy. Get it right with made in the USA quality and value from Allen Edmonds. To find the right pair of shoes for you, or anything. I mean, they've got belts and hats, and, if you're a Jack Nicklaus fan, they've got all kinds of Nicklaus products as well. Go to AllenEdmonds.com. Allen Edmonds is an American original. I want to kick off the show, folks, as we do every single week on Next on the Tee, plus our sister show, Thursday Night Tailgate, by saluting the brave men and women serving in our military. We want to thank all of you for your daily sacrifices and for what you do every single day to keep the rest of us safe. We also want to thank our veterans for all you've done for us over the years. We truly appreciate everything our military personnel do to preserve the freedoms and the liberties that we all have. It's through your strength and your efforts that our way of life is even possible. Our sincere thanks as well to Sean Cruz and all the wonderful folks over at the Armed Forces Radio Network. It's an honor for us to have our show be a part of your network. You can find us by going to armedforcesradionetwork.org. And I also want to remind our veterans out there, be sure to check out globalvoiceforveterans.org. It's a great site with articles and news and a wealth of information designed specifically for our veterans that I'm sure you guys and gals are going to find very interesting and very, very, very beneficial. Easy for me to say. Again, go to globalvoiceforveterans.org to check it out online. We also want to thank everyone listening in across the internet and great sites like iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, and Blog Talk Radio as well. Plus, if someone's dragging you to the mall or to the grocery store, or you're just simply tired of the same old on your commute, download the Player.fm or Stitcher app on your smartphone so you can take us with you everywhere you go. Let us give you something fun to focus on while you're out and about. All right, now back with me on the Seymour Putters guest line is the voice of golf, Peter Kessler. Peter, like I said in the intro, has interviewed just about every major golf figure from the 20th and 21st centuries. In the early to mid-'90s, he was the voice of HBO Sports, moved on to become the primary broadcasting talent when the Golf Show, or the Golf Channel, launched back in January of 1995, and he's also hosted his own show on SiriusXM's PGA channel. You can stream or download many of the outstanding interviews that Peter has done with those legends by going to the Peter Kessler Show on iTunes. And when I say this, I mean it sincerely. When you talk about great interviewers or show hosts, no one has ever done it better than Peter Kessler. Good morning, Peter. How are you, my friend?
I am delighted to be with you, and thanks for pumping me up like that. That's a lovely way to start the day. Thank you.
Absolutely. Peter, I want to start off our time today by getting your thoughts. We're on the precipice now of the U.S. Open, just a few days shy of U.S. Open week. It is the 115th U.S. Open. It's being played out at Chambers Bay, the first time the U.S. Open has been played in the Pacific Northwest and out in the state of Washington. It's sort of a link style, similar to what you'd see over in Scotland, and it's right on the water there at Puget Sound. Who are some of the favorites that you think are going to win this, be in contention to win this year? Perhaps maybe a couple of dark horses as well. And do you think that layout is going to favor the European players?
Well, I don't think it'll favor a player from a particular country, because this business about the English and Scottish players having grown up playing links golf is complete nonsense. They didn't play links golf at all. Unless you grew up on the coast, you didn't play links golf, because there's no links golf inland. It's strictly by the sea. And there isn't a great player who grew up at St. Andrews, or a great player who grew up at Carnoustie, or a great player who grew up at Royal Liverpool. So those guys didn't play links golf. So to answer your second question first, I don't think anybody of any country of origin has an advantage of all, because nobody's seen anything like this anyway. It's like looking at the dark side of the moon. It's an incredibly complex-looking piece of ground that they've transformed this golf course into. And I like a couple of kinds of players. It appears as though you can hit it as far as you can hit it without really worrying about getting into too much trouble unless you're significantly offline. But there looks like there's plenty of room for guys to hit it long. So I like Bubba, which is not a popular pick, but I like Bubba because I think he'll enjoy hitting big sweeping hooks and slices around this golf course. I think he'll actually get into it. And when he gets into it, he can be very, very difficult to beat. And he can be very, very good on and around the greens when he's playing well. When he's not, sometimes he has a little bit of a give-up attitude, but when he's playing well, he turns chipping and putting into fun more than a problem. So I like his length, and I like his ability to work the golf ball. A lot of the preliminary reports have said that these greens are basically 4 quadrants, and you need to be on the right quadrant, because going from quadrant to quadrant is extremely difficult because of the slopes and humps and bumps in the greens. So, yeah, I like a long hitter who can position the golf ball. So you also have to like Rory McIlroy, who when he's straight is longer and straighter than everybody. And so, and he's a very good putter, and he's obviously a terrific iron player, particularly with the short irons, of which he has many going into all of the holes that he plays. I mean, in his most recent win, he was hitting 9-iron or less into 15 of the 18 holes on a given day. So you got to like his chances a lot. And, of course, he won 2 majors last year, and he's been playing, more importantly, some really good golf lately. He's had a couple of iffy tournaments. The Irish Open didn't work out very well. But basically, he's been playing good golf for a couple of months. So you've got to like his chances. Bubba, Rory, Dustin Johnson, for all of the same reasons as the guys above, hits it a really long way. Very creative shot maker. He seems to be having a head-on that's working for him right now. Whatever his problems were, they seem to be sorted out, and he's playing some really super golf right now, so you like him. And then my favorite is still Jordan Spieth because of a few reasons. One, over the last 6-8 months, he's played better golf than anybody. The most consistent golf, the best golf, and he's putted better than everybody over that time period from pretty much every distance, statistically speaking. And from an important point of view, he's been making the putts, making a 10-footer to get into a playoff at a PGA Tour event, making a 35-footer, then go ahead and win. And I mean, he's a very special player who's playing some special golf. And he's got 3 things going for him. 1, he's a special player who's playing special golf. 2, his caddy, Michael Greller, knows the golf course better than anybody else because he was a caddy there. I mean, who better would you choose than a guy who was a caddy there? And, oh, by the way, it happens to be your permanent caddy. I mean, that's a pretty ridiculous, heads up on the rest of the field. When your caddy knows where to put it better than any other caddy knows where to put it, for sure it's got to be worth the shot around. For sure it's got to be worth the shot for Greller to say, oh, wait, this is a trick shot from this angle. You have to do this. He's going to know more of that than the other caddies for sure. So that's got to be worth the shot around. And then the third thing is Jordan Spieth knows the golf course because now it's been 5 years, but he played it as a junior and he shot a ton, but he played the golf course and he remembers the golf course and they'll get in enough practice rounds. So he's playing better than anybody else and he'll know the golf course better than anybody else, and that's a pretty daunting combination. So I like him. In terms of a dark horse, gosh, you'd love to pick a guy like Snedeker or Kuchar, but I just don't see Kuchar not overhooking it, and I don't see Snedeker. I just think he's a more iffy putter than he is a really good putter, and so I'm going to go with no dark horse. I'm going to go with you've got to be one of the really, really good players to win this championship. I don't think it's going to be somebody fluky at all.
What about a guy like Jim Furyk? Furyk, who's been he's got 4 top 10s so far this season. Got a win, got himself back in the winner's circle. A guy who's been in and around the lead in a lot of tournaments over the last couple of years. Do you think Furyk's got an opportunity to win one here?
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's a very interesting guy to describe because I would call him just a really good player of his time. I don't think he's a great player by any means. I don't think he's one of the best players of his time. I don't think he's Hall of Fame material. I mean, look at the facts. Tiger's got 79 wins, and Phil's got 42, and VJ's got some huge number close to that. And you've got Ernie Els with his 4 majors, and even Padraig Harrington with his 3 majors. You've got 5 or 6 guys who are clearly a whole layer or 2 better than Furyk, a whole layer or 2. 17 wins in a major championship is not good enough, in my view, to get into the Hall of Fame. He's got the worst Ryder Cup track record of anybody who's ever played the game. He went 0 for 9 with 54-hole leads from 2010 to 2015 before he finally poked through and picked one up. And statistically, you have to. 1 out of 10, he finally did it. So I think there's a lot of stuff you can knock. On the other hand, this guy hits more good iron shots. It's just unbelievable. He rarely seems to be out of play. And if you watch him when he's in contention in a tournament, he hits so many shots to 8 and 10 feet. He just misses a ton of 8 and 10 footers, though. But he hits so many shots close to the hole. I think that, where you've got a really small target area, that Jim Furyk is one of the guys you really got to watch out for. Just a question of Furyk's putting. If he can make the 8 and 10 footers and he can shake in the 5 footers for par that you need to shake in, that he's not done a good job with for the last 5 or 6 years, then there's no question he could do well. Because I mean, now I may be critical of him for the things that I did say, but I'll say this on the positive side. He's an incredibly great ball striker, hits a lot of balls close to the hole, and he may be the second most consistent player of his time, after Tiger Woods, of course, because he's very consistent. And after winning, the hardest thing to do is to be consistent. So a consistent player who drives it well, who can put the ball into small areas on the greens, ought to do well.
So, Peter, I want to build off something you said about Furyk, not being, a great player and a Hall of Fame player. We know Fred Couples is going in the Hall of Fame this year, has fewer wins and also only one major. Has the Hall of Fame become the Hall of the pretty good?
Yeah, and there's a definite reason for that, which is that the PGA Tour wants to put on a show every year inducting people into the World Golf Hall of Fame, except you don't have people coming up in golf every year. It's not like baseball where you got hundreds and hundreds of players. In golf, there's only going to be a few players to choose from. And,
right.
While there may be a few guys only getting in baseball, at least there's a crop to choose from. In golf, there's not a crop every year. All of a sudden, some guy becomes eligible because he's 40. Tiger Woods is going to be the next one, so they don't have to worry about the following year. But I just think it's become the hall of the good. I mean, Freddie Couples. I mean, I like Freddie very much, but he's one of the most marginal players of his generation. In 30 years on the tour, 30 on the PGA Tour, he won 15 times with that golf swing. 15 times. That's ridiculous. Now, Mark O'Meara is going in. He won 16 times with 2 majors to Freddie's 1. I put a lot more value on 16 and 2 than I do on 15 and 1. Furyk 17 and 1. I say the minimum criteria ought to be 20 and 2. You have to win 20 times in the PGA Tour, and you have to have 2 major championships, and that would let guys out who've gotten in, like everybody that I just mentioned. And guys like Lanny Watkins with 1 major wouldn't have gotten in under that criteria. Davis Love wouldn't have gotten in under that criteria. Tom Kite would not have gotten in under that criteria. Colin Montgomery would not have gotten in under that criteria. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys that 20 and 2 kicks out the door who ought to have it, said to that they should take their leave.
Peter, when we talk about, the U.S. Open and some of the most memorable Opens of all time, what are some of the events that immediately come to mind when you think about 4 or 5 top U.S. Opens ever?
Well, let's see. I would go with 1913, 1930, 1951, 1960, 1972, and 2000, I guess, because in 2013, that's the time that America took over leadership in golf, that its best players were now going to come from America, not from Great Britain. When a 20-year-old caddy, Francis Ouimet, in 1913 at his home course, the Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts, beat the 2 best players in the world at the time, Harry Vardon and Ted Ray, in a playoff. And he went on to become one of the really esteemed figures in golf and one of its really good players and an esteemed elder statesman. But that signified the turning of the game towards the American side, which, until 1990 or so, or maybe just when Seve came along, a little bit of the tide started to shift, but it basically remained an American-dominated game. And so 1930, I would put for Bob Jones winning the U.S. Open at Interlaken to almost complete the Grand Slam. He won by a couple shots and then won the U.S. Amateur shortly thereafter at Marion. But that was huge because that completed the Grand Slam year. 51, Oakland Hills, Ben Hogan. I would say that because Robert Trent Jones redid the golf course and made it completely ridiculous, and Hogan said, I bought this monster to its knees. it signaled the ushering in of a very unfortunate period of golf that still is with us today, which is making the golf courses as hard as they can be. Before then, they did not make them as hard as they could be. They just let the guys play golf. I mean, they may put the pins in some tough places, but even then, they just rotated the pins. They weren't looking for little side slopes to embarrass the players. But that ushered in an era of very difficult golf courses in terms of the building of those golf courses and the maintaining of those golf courses for championship play that would come along for 1 week every 10 years. And it would also start to solidify Hogan's reputation as one of the best players of all time, as he was in the middle of a run of 6 majors over a few years that would get him to 9 and get him into the pantheon of one of the great players. 1960, I would say Arnold Palmer, establishing a relationship between golf and television and between himself and golf fans, both of which have only gotten stronger over time. Golf on television, of course, and the public's infatuation with Arnold. So that was huge. It introduced Nicklaus for the first time to golf fans, and it was the last hurrah of Hogan, who had a chance to win on the final day with an hour to play. 72, Nicklaus wins the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, and he had just won the Masters and went over to play the British Open at Muirfield and had a chance to pick up the third leg of the Slam, which he did not get by a single shot when Trevino chipped in on the 71st hole and parred 72nd hole to nip Tony Jacklin and Jack Nicklaus by a shot. And so that was, I thought, a pivotal Open in terms of just reminding us of how great Jack was, and the way that he won at Pebble in pretty iffy weather was pretty dramatic, and the 1 iron to 4 inches was incredible. And so that was a pretty big landmark. And then 2000 with Tiger, he won by 15 shots. I was there. It had nothing to do with chipping or putting. You could have chipped and putted for him all week, and he would have still won by 15 shots. There was no chipping and putting to do. He didn't miss greens. In that time period, Tiger Woods hit it down the middle of the fairway virtually every time with any club that he chose to drive it with. He'd hit it to 15 feet, and he'd make some, and he would miss some, and that's how his rounds were constructed. There was none of that stuff with the wedge, none of it whatsoever. I can't think really of more than 2 or 3 shots that he played from 1999 through, say, 2003 in major championships that you would characterize as, oh, my God, what an incredible flop shot. There just wasn't any of that because he didn't need it. It was only later when he started to block his driver that he got in trouble. But I can assure you, in 2000 at Pebble, I don't remember him hit. He maybe one up and down, I remember, on the 70th hole of the tournament. Tiger had now played the 4th round without a bogey, which was his goal. He mentioned it to me the morning of the final round. He said, my goal is not to make any bogeys with a 10-shot lead, and then nobody will catch me. And I said, I could take a 10-shot lead in the final round, and nobody could catch me. And so he came to the 16th hole, and he knocked it over the green in 2, and he hit a chip, a good chip, but it was a really hard chip, hit a good chip to about 12 feet below the hole, and made the putt, and fist pumped like he had just, moved into a 1-shot lead in the tournament instead of a 14-shot lead in the tournament. And so that was remarkable. It was just a really good up and down, but it was just a really good up and down. It wasn't a, oh my God, from the middle of the woods over the tree and through the clown's nose. He just didn't do any of that until later. He may have had that short game ready to go, but he certainly didn't have to use it at that time. And so that was the introduction of a completely new kind of player, somebody who hit it longer, somebody who hit it straighter, somebody who hit it higher. And we would find out later somebody who would putt better. When you win by 15 shots, it's not all done by putting. And he was also the first guy who had what we now think of as the juiced-up ball of this century. In 2000 at the U.S. Open, he had a hot ball from Titleist that almost nobody else in the field had, and that helped out a lot too.
Peter, one more before we let you go. I've got my next guest, Ian Baker-Finch, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Ian in just a moment. Just to kind of build off of, the completely new kind of player you mentioned about Tiger, and it is a completely new kind of Tiger that we've seen, for the better part of the last, couple of years. I think we were all surprised at how well he played in the Masters at Augusta National, for how poorly he was playing in the weeks leading up to it. And we've seen erratic play from him in just about every other tournament this year, highlighted by the third round 85 at the Memorial. What do you think it's going to take in order for Tiger to get back to playing consistently good golf?
Well, I think it's going to take an awful lot. I think that he's in trouble right through the bag, and he's in trouble psychologically. So that's a lot of stuff. I mean, I think he has a fear of playing in public now. I think that he has a terrific problem taking his game from the practice tee, which I understand is absolutely phenomenal, to the first tee, which a lot of recreational golfers are unable to do as well. Hit it good on the range and then play bad golf.
Right.
I think he's become uncomfortable playing in front of people now, and I think it brings out the worst in him. I know that, and I know this has nothing. This is maybe not a good example, but I know that for me, if there are people around the tee that I don't know, I might be more uncomfortable. If I play with a stranger, I might be more uncomfortable and less likely to play my game. I think on some level those things are bothering him. I think the people are bothering him. I think the atmosphere is bothering him. I think the fact that he doesn't have confidence is bothering him. I mean, confidence comes from two places, and that's really your question, is when will he have the confidence to play good golf again? And it's a tough question, because if confidence comes from successfully doing the same thing over and over again, and then having people tell you have done things successfully over and over again, if that's where confidence comes from, he's batting zero, because he doesn't have anything to fall back on now that says you're playing good. So there's an 0 for 1 in confidence. And he's got nobody who's telling him he's playing good golf now, so there's 0 for 2. And the reality is he isn't playing good golf, so he's 0 for 3. And the fourth thing is he's thinking about it is not clear. He doesn't seem to have the clutter removed. He's still thinking about these numbers and TrackMan and perfect swings and his glutes and getting the trajectory right and repetitions. And it's all, golf, it's all psychobabble, and none of it means anything. And all golfers know it. Anybody who plays golf, I don't care if you're a 20 handicapper or a +5 handicap, everybody knows that what he's talking about is nonsense. There isn't any of those things. There's no release patterns. There's no fast twitch muscle. There isn't any of that. That's all nonsense. Those things may exist, but they don't have anything to do with anything. Jack Nicklaus seemed to get by fine without that, and so did every other player including Tiger, until this iteration of Tiger. So I'm going to be surprised if he makes the cut at Chambers Bay, if you're asking me to make a short-term prediction.
All right. Peter, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to be a part of the show. Do me a favor, remind our listeners again how they can find your show and how they can follow you over social media.
Well, you can, I tweet on occasion, and you can find me, Peter Kessler, and I also have a radio show on iTunes, The Peter Kessler Show, which has about 80 shows on it with some of the greatest players in the history of the game. And I made a DVD with Gary Player that seems to be doing well, The Game for Life, and hoping to make a couple of documentaries about Gary Player, sponsored by Rolex and Lexus and people like that, if we can pull the thing together. So I'm keeping reasonably busy and doing kind of a diverse group of projects.
Great stuff. Peter, thank you so much again for being a part of the show. There isn't a better way to spend Saturday morning than to listen to you share your thoughts, your insights, and your stories. I can't thank you enough for continuing to come back on the show. You're truly one of the greats.
All you have to do is call, and I shall be there, and thank you for the nice compliments. I appreciate it, and it's always a pleasure to be on the show, and I always appreciate the quality of the questions. Thanks.
All right. Take care, Peter. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Same to you, Chris. Thank you, buddy.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Peter Kessler, and again, the Peter Kessler Show on iTunes, as Peter points out, and we talked about in the intro. Great stuff. He's got so many of the legends that have ever played this game. So go check it out on iTunes. All right, now joining me on the Seymour Putters guest line is Ian Baker-Finch. Let me remind you about Ian's background. He's from Queensland, Australia. He turned pro in 1979 at the age of 19, and he credits Jack Nicklaus as his greatest influence, saying he based his game on Mr. Nicklaus's book, Golf My Way. So you know we're going to talk about that. He won his first professional tournament in 1983 at the New Zealand Open. He finished third in the World Series of Golf in 1988 and started playing regularly on the PGA Tour in 1989. Won his first PGA Tour event at the 89 Southwestern Bell Colonial. We all remember the thrilling win he had at the 1991 Open Championship at Royal Birkdale, finishing with rounds of 64 and 66 to win by 2 over his fellow countryman Mike Harwood and 3 over Fred Couples and Mark O'Meara, a 29 on the outward 9 in the final round. Following that year, he finished 6th at the Masters and 2nd at the Players' Championship. In 2000, he was awarded the Australian Sports Medal for his achievements in Australian sports, and we get the privilege and the pleasure of watching and appreciating him every week when he is broadcasting for CBS Sports Now. Clearly one of the best in the business, and I am honored to have him with me next on the tee this morning. Hi, Ian. Thank you for joining me, my friend.
Good morning, Chris. Lovely to talk to you and listen to Peter for the last 10 minutes. He's got a wealth of knowledge, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, you know, the history of the game. I don't think there's a person on the planet that's a walking encyclopedia for golf history than Peter Kessler. Great stuff. I always enjoy the honor of having Peter as part of the show.
I agree.
Ian,
he's fantastic.
Ian, as everyone who listens to this show knows, I'm a big Jack Nicklaus fan, so I love the fact that you based your game on his book, Golf My Way. When in life were you first bitten by the golf bug, and what pointed you in the direction to use that book to develop your game?
I grew up on a farm about an hour and a half out of Brisbane in Queensland, Australia, up on an area called the Glasshouse Mountains on the Sunshine Coast. No one played golf. A few of the farmers, my dad included, got the bug from Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, and the big 3 shows that were broadcast around the world. And they decided to build a golf course in our little town about 6 miles from our farm. And all voluntary labour, they built a little 9-hole course called Biwa Golf Club. It's still there today, and they've extended it to 18 holes. And I would drive down on the tractors with Dad and all the men, and we built this golf course. And at the age of 12, I got my first set of clubs. And I left school at the age of 15 to be a golf pro and do my apprenticeship with a PGA professional, and then started playing the tour when I was 18. So I got the bug early and, achieved all the stuff that you do as a kid and juniors and schoolboys and what have you, and decided to make it my life's challenge, and I haven't looked back.
Have you had a chance to sit down with Mr. Nicklaus and tell him that it was actually his book that taught your swing, or how you learned to swing?
Yeah, I believe it was my 13th birthday I got the book, and I would always, there was no pro at the club, it was a little country golf course, and I would just have the book, open up the page and put a club across it and try and emulate everything that Jack had written and did, and tried to copy the photographs. I think a lot of players of my age and in my era did the same thing. You know, they got Jack Nicklaus's book and taught themselves how to play. So I've become good friends with Jack and very good friends of his eldest son, Jackie. We're the same age, live in the same town, and our kids went to the same schools and what have you over here in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. So, wow. It's pretty amazing, really, to come from where I did and to be where I am now and friends of the great man. Yeah, it's pretty special.
No doubt. Good for you. And you got your first professional win at the 83 New Zealand Open, where you were, 22, 23 years old? What was that like
22,
for you to win such a... Yeah, what was it like for you at that young age to win such a prestigious event?
It was really just a natural progression, I think. I'd been playing on the tour for a while and had started to play a little bit internationally, going over to Asia. And I'd finished runner-up in the Australian Open the week before. So it was sort of a natural progression. And I really, it was pretty raw bone stuff back then. I know it's only 30 years ago, but it was so different to now. You just you packed up your clubs and you went away and tried your best and tried to make money. And when you ran out of money, you went back and got a job or did whatever you had to do to get back out there on tour at that young age. It was like our college, 18 to 22 was our college years on tour with your buddies, having a great time, learning how to play the game for a living. So that was a tremendous boost, and it got me into the British Open the following year because I was top 5 on the money list on the Australasian Tour. So that second, first, those 2 weeks were a big part of the progression. I played St Andrews and led for 3 days and sort of started to feel like I was capable of playing with the world players and playing internationally. So that was really the stepping stone to my career.
When I was kind of looking back over your playing history, you played really well at Augusta National. In 91, you finished 7th. 92, tied for 6th. 94, you finished tied for 10th. What helped you to, that's not an easy course to just step up and start playing at a high level like you did. What helped you play so well there?
I think I was just always so switched on and fired up at the majors. I believed I was always a very good putter and good around the greens, and I always felt I could win there. But the style of putter I was and still am was so aggressive that I found it very hard on the short putts, having to hit them outside the hole. And I always had a lot of 3 putts at Augusta. I think I could have won in 91 and 92 had I putted a little bit better. And but the course itself really suited my game. In those days, it wasn't so long. You didn't have to be a bomber. It helped to be a bomber on the par 5s, but you didn't have to be. I could reach the par 5s. So, I think Augusta is just such a wonderful test and such an inspiring place that, it's easy to get up for.
Do you remember the first time you got the opportunity to drive up Magnolia Lane? What was that like?
Yeah, I'd finished well at the Open Championship in 84, and I was invited to play Augusta National in 85, was my first year there. So I was 24, In those days, that was young. Now there's 50 guys on tour that are that age. But back then, if you're winning and playing well at an international level in your early 20s, it was somewhat unusual. So it was hard to expect to play well the first year, and I didn't. I missed the cut. But I played nicely, just, my aggressive style of putting certainly didn't suit it, and I think I had 10 3 putts in the first 2 rounds. But the experience of driving up Magnolia Lane for the first time, and in fact any time when I go back there each year now at CBS and as an honorary invitee, and I play the par 3 and feel a part of the event and the week, it's just an incredible, surreal experience, and always will be. I think it's one of the most amazing places in the world of golf. And that drive is, we make it into something really special with the media coverage and seeing the clubhouse at the end and the green with the yellow flag and the Augusta National, logo, so famous.
Right.
The Masters logo. It's just, it really is that special. It's not trumped up.
I want to talk a little about your win at the 91 Open Championship. You had one of the most amazing front nines in major championship history. You go out in 29, making almost every putt you looked at. Did you just have a feeling that everything you looked at that day was going to go in?
It was more the play that, I had 5 good putts in the first 7 holes. I had 5 birdies in the first 7.
Yeah.
But they were the only 1 putts I had all day. I 2-putted everything else. I was just playing relaxed golf. I'd been playing well in the summer leading into the Open. I'd played in the final group the year before with Nick Faldo and watched him win in style. And I just forced myself to think of it, although it wasn't, and it was certainly my goal to win an Open Championship, but I forced myself to think that it was just another event. It was just another tour event, and I was going to continue to play like I had been and I was going to get out of my own way when the pressure was on, and I basically committed to letting myself play the way I knew I was and could. And Mark O'Meara and I played in the last group. We were leading, tied for the lead, and I just jumped out of the boxes so well, and focused, made some good birdies. The weather was off and on again, raining and windy and typical Open Championship weather, and nothing seemed to bother me. It was just a comfortable round of golf, and down the end I knocked it on 17 in 2 and 2-putted for birdie for a 3-shot lead, and I just played safe up the last, knocked it down the left into the left rough, hit a 6-iron out short, chipped it on to 12 feet and 2-putted for the bogey to win by 2. So huge relief in a lot of ways, getting it done and doing it from the lead. But my commitment to just allowing myself to try and relax and not let the moment get the better of me, I think, was the winning formula for me.
Yeah, and your countryman Mike Harwood, as you pointed out, I mean, you walk off the 7th green, you went from a tie with O'Meara, you walk off the 7th green after your 5 birdies, all of a sudden you're 5 strokes in front. Your countryman Mike Harwood cuts into your lead, cuts it down to 2 as you guys go to 16, and then on 16 you hit one of the prettiest 4-iron shots that you're ever going to see. Did that did doubt ever start to creep in your mind as Harwood starts to cut into your lead, and then finally when you get to 16 and you hit that 4-iron, did that tell you, what, I'm going to win this thing?
Yeah, pretty much. That was a pretty shot, and I remember saying to my caddy Pete Bender, I said, "You like that one, Petey?" As it was in the air, going straight at the flag, and he said, "I love it." And it was 10 feet away. I 2-putted for the par, and then knocked it on for 2 on the next, and 2-putted for birdie. And I guess I wasn't concerned that someone was charging. I was more concerned in doing what I had to do, and that was keep hitting the ball in the fairway and on the greens. And there was no stress. I didn't have to hold the putts. You know what I mean? I was in far enough in front that I could knock it on the green and 2-putt all the way home, and the rest is history. Wish I could have kept doing it.
I want to close the thought on that Open is as you come up 18, the fans are rushing all around you, and they get out there actually on the course. So it's a little different there, right, where they get to actually run out on the course and sort of surround the green. What was it like kind of walking through the crowd? I know Mark O'Meara gets knocked down, I think, on his way up trying to get to the green. But, the enthusiasm of the crowd and to see that and to know that that's all there for you. What's that feel like?
At the time, you're just concentrating on getting it done. You can't relax until the ball's in the hole and the card is signed. But it's bedlam, it's mayhem. I had experienced it twice before. In 84 and 90, I had been in the final group on the Sunday and didn't win, so I was in a different frame of mind, obviously, being knocked about by the crowds, etc., and on those 2 occasions at St Andrews. But it is now curtailed somewhat. They have double barriers and lots of police and security people and whatever to keep them away from the players, because anything could happen in there. It really is thousands of fans charging to get a view of the green and to get close to their heroes, etc. So it's a little less prevalent now in the modern era, but then it wasn't a scary situation. You had a couple of bobbies beside you walking you through, but yeah, Mark got knocked down, his shoe came off, and it was it could have been more serious. You know what I mean? Sometime it could have been where a player was knocked down and perhaps couldn't finish or needed attention. So I'm glad they've improved that situation a little bit. It's exciting as you're doing it. It's a big part of the memory and the experience.
Let's talk a little bit now. You're on the other side of the mic, if you will, and covering for CBS Sports. And Ian, I read that at the 2007 Barclays tournament, while you're covering it for CBS, you get hit by an errant shot by Rich Beam in the teeth and momentarily knocked you out. Do you mind telling that story?
Yeah, it was back then we used to interview the CEO. It was Bob Diamond from Barclays, and I would always come down out of the tower and head up to 18 and be there ready as the last groups approached 18 to interview the CEO of the tournament and the leading sponsor. So I was down there with him, and had it not hit me in the cheek, it would have hit him right in the face. It was I was right beside him, ready to go, had the mic up, ready to go. I'm here with Bob Diamond from Barclays, blah, blah, blah. And Beamer snaphooks a 3-wood up the last and whacks me in the mouth, knocks my teeth loose, hits me to the ground. I get back up, and unbeknownst to me, the cameraman in the 18th tower always follows the shots into 18 green, and he had followed the shot of Rich Beams and caught the whole thing on camera. So they then proceeded to show it on TV, so I had lots of concerned fans and family and whatever calling me later, and my phone lit up, and was everything okay? But, it's just one of those moments, just another one of those times. It'll always be a good story to tell.
Right. Ian, before we let you go, we got the U.S. Open coming up, and curious to get your thoughts. Who are the guys that you think are the favorites to win this tournament? And what should we be looking for next week as we watch the coverage?
I would say as briefly as possible, it's not like a typical U.S. Open because of the style of the golf course. So I'd be looking for players that I believe would be better typically at a British Open, because that's the style of course it will be. And it's the same at the PGA Championship at Whistling Straits. You have to have a lot of patience. You have to expect the worst at times. You have to keep it in play. You have to fight the winds. I'm sure there'll be strong winds there. The greens are huge and extremely difficult, and they'll be slow like a British Open, not fast and hard like a typical US Open. So, I kind of like guys, obviously Rory McIlroy. I'm not going out on a limb by suggesting him. He's number one in the world by far. But I think he has what it takes to win on that style of course because, take away how he played at the Irish Open a couple of weeks ago. That was totally unusual. But he's normally good at being prepared for that sort of stuff. I think guys that, say, Webb Simpson, who's great around the greens. Phil Mickelson, I'd love to see him win, having had 6 runner-up places. And the bombers, Dustin Johnson, Bubba Watson, Henrik Stenson, guys like that can nail it out there. Jason Day, perhaps, although he hits the ball terribly high. If the wind blows, I always find that a bit of a detriment for Jason, that he does hit the ball so high always. There's lots of ways of thinking about it. Is it the bomber, or is it the good chipper and putter? So if you have both of those, and you've got the patience and the major championship mentality, to me, they're the favourites. And I think it'll be interesting. I really do. I'm really interested. I'll be watching it a lot. I'm not covering it. I'm not going out there. It'll be on Fox, but I'll be interested to see how the guys handle that type of golf course.
Right. Ian, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to be a part of the show. You're fantastic. Let our listeners know, how can they follow you online and over social media?
Oh, I'm my Twitter handle. Excuse me, I don't tweet that often, but it's really just golf and my experiences in golf and where I'm playing now, and tweeting the CBS coverage. IB Finchy, it's capital IBF Finchy, and as you said, always on CBS every weekend, and we'll be on today at the FedEx St. Jude Classic in Memphis from 2 to 5 local, 3 to 6 Eastern. So I think we have a great ensemble of voices and our technical team, men and women on the cameras and in the trucks are just second to none at CBS. We've been a big family for a long time, so it's really the best coverage to watch, in my opinion, and a lot of fun doing it.
There you go. Ian, I really hope you'll come back and join me again sometime. So many other events that you got to be a part of and play in that I'd love to get your thoughts on, but you're fantastic. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks very much, Chris. You keep up the great work.
Thanks, Ian. All the best to you and your family.
Thank you. And to you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ian. Ian Baker-Finch. Wow. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who's, so fantastic to watch on on the coverage now, but had such a great career that doesn't get enough credit for, and that 91 Open Championship, absolutely amazing. If you have the opportunity, check it out on YouTube. That outward 9 of 29, and then final rounds of 64 and 66 to win, and absolutely amazing. And what a great man on top of all of that. All right, now joining me on the Seymour Putters guest line is Bob Geismar, and Bob is the founder of One Thought Golf, which you can buy and download his book from his site, bobgeismar.com, and I am thrilled to have him with me next on the tee this morning. Good morning, Bob. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Chris. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I got you great. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, I'm on my cell, and sometimes you know how cell phones work.
Indeed. So, Bob, before we get into some of the golf philosophy and One Thought Golf, please, when I went onto your site, your story is absolutely amazing. Do you mind sharing that with our listeners?
I'd be happy to, not because of how I recovered, but because I hope to help a lot of people. About 9 years ago, Chris, I got stricken out of the blue. I'm 52 years old. Healthy as a horse. I could walk 36 holes in those days. I got stricken out of the blue, and to give you the Reader's Digest version, with a very rare disease called Churg-Strauss syndrome, and it's a form of a broader group of diseases called vasculitis. Churg-Strauss syndrome hits approximately 300 Americans a year. Very rare, not the rarest of diseases, but very rare. Pardon me, I was pretty much ready to check it out when a couple of great doctors saved my life. And the offshoot is I'm in remission. I have been for years. I get fabulous doctoring, tremendous treatments, great doctors who are amazing. I got to tell you something, Chris. If there's something wrong with you, and you live in America, there's probably somebody who's working on that. It's a truly, we have, to get off on a tangent, but we do have criticisms of a lot of things in our lives. But if there's something wrong with you, there's somebody working on it. Because not many people get what I have, and yet Cleveland Clinic in Ohio has a group of doctors that really just amazingly care deeply and have helped me a lot. And the only thing is, though, it left me with severe nerve damage, Chris, in my hands and feet, particularly my left hand, which I literally lost the use of, and was told by a couple of doctors that I probably would never play golf again. Well, that pretty much devastated me, as you might imagine, being an avid golfer my whole life. Right. So, again, shortening the story a little bit for time's sake, I went through extensive occupational therapy for 15 months and was able to get back on the golf course and had the greatest round of my life. Not score-wise, I shot an 85 after not playing for 18 months, and nothing will ever beat that. Not my hole-in-one, not breaking 80, nothing ever beat that round of golf because I proved them wrong. And I'm here to tell you that if I can do it, so can you. And a lot of people have health issues that they deal with on a daily basis, and there's help out there. And don't be afraid to ask for it. Anyway, thanks for letting me tell my story. I appreciate that, Chris.
Absolutely. And, Bob, I guess one of the things that, just struck me so much is talk about, maintaining the fortitude when doctors are telling you you're never going to play the game you love again, and not allowing that to defeat you and to rise up and to kind of will yourself back out there. Talk about being able to do that.
Well, I needed some help. I'm being honest with you. I needed what I call an empathetic ear. The doctors could give me sympathy. My friends, my family, they could all give me sympathy. They had no idea how I felt. I did find a woman in Texas through the internet who didn't have Churg-Strauss syndrome, but her daughter does. And it's such a rare disease, it very rarely inflicts people under the age of 35. And this woman spent 4 hours with me, Chris, on the phone one day, out of the blue, and she said to me, I said, "Gosh, I want to play golf again." And she goes, "I don't know what is it about golf, but everybody wants to play golf again." She was laughing because she had helped other people. She said, "I can't promise that you'll ever play golf again, but I will tell you this: people have come back from this, and that I will be there with you every step of the way." What else to say? I get a little emotional. Sorry about the emotion, but it meant a lot to me because if she didn't tell me that, I didn't know what I was going to do. Sorry, Chris.
No reason
Sorry
to
for
be.
the emotion there.
That's an emotional story.
It is an emotional story. And I still play in pain, but I don't even notice it anymore, really. I just, I'm past all that. We get past it quickly. So, at any rate, that's how I maintained it. I put a 7-iron in my hand every day, and every day it would clunk to the floor until one day it didn't clunk. And I said, "You know what? It's here." And I called everybody. I said, "I'm going to be able to play golf again." And pretty cool round, that first one, Chris. Got to be honest with you. I strike my first drive right down the middle, much to the astonishment of the men I was playing with. So much to the astonishment that nobody said anything. We just went to the ball. It was great, yeah.
I bet that was a great feeling. Good for you, Bob. So let's talk a little bit about your philosophy around the game. You don't advocate beating balls on the range in between rounds or even prior to playing. You're all about stretching and mental preparation. Why should we stay away from going to the driving range?
Because we're not good enough. In a quick sentence, I think that the game of golf has been taught in such a way that we think there's some secret out there or something special that you don't already have an opportunity to have and possess in your being right now. And I say that meaning you already possess the power. You read my the website, and that's one of my mantras. You possess the power. Why should you go to the range and do what the pros do when they're doing something different? We're trained, Chris, from day one to try to do what the professionals do. And I think that it's improper. Let me give you an example. I drive a car on the street. Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart drive cars too. Well, sort of. They don't drive the same kind of car I do, nor does Phil Mickelson strike a golf ball like I do. I don't think like Phil Mickelson. I can't play like Phil Mickelson. He has to go to the range. Why would I go to the range when it's not going to help me? There's nothing I'm going to learn there. And it is one of the points of my philosophy that's been challenged. And if you want to go to the range, that's fine. I don't have a big problem with it. But remember, you're not going to find it on the range. You're only going to find it in what I call the foxhole. And you read my information, my book. We're not good enough, Chris, to do it on the range. You can only do this in what I call the foxhole, which is in that instant. You know, you're in the rough, the lie isn't good, whatever, in that 1 second when you have an opportunity to do it, that's how you do it. And when you do it, you remember it, and it gets better and better with time. So,
Bob, so much of what you've got out there on your site, again, it's Bob Geismar, Geismar, so go to bobgeismar.com. There's a lot of great stuff that you relay in there. You also talk about how goes along with what you're just saying. You talk about when you're going to play golf, you prepare for, playing great before you even get in the car or on your drive to the course. You're pre-programming yourself for thinking and action success. What do you mean by that?
Well, most amateur golfers, Chris, go to the golf course. They don't really have, I call, a formula, a process, or a game plan. I do, and I developed it because if you feel as though you can play well and you tell yourself you're going to play well every single time, you will play well every single time. And I was a 15 handicapper, and I'd go to the golf course on Saturday, and I might say, gee, I'm going to try to putt better today, or I'm going to try to chip better today, or whatever. But I didn't have a game plan. If you prepare athletically, and that's the other thing I do, I don't want to call people recreational golfers. I don't know what that means. Recreation is when you take your kids to the park and they run around. That's a recreational activity. This is an athletic event and should be treated as an athletic event. Athletes prepare to succeed, and they have game plans and execute those game plans. And that's what I do with my philosophy, Chris, is execute a game plan in an athletic point of view.
So to that end, which is always funny to me, because forever, Bob, people are talking about how golfers aren't athletes, right?
Right.
And you talk about but you talk about the opposite side about preparing yourself, athletically, which is stretching and that sort of thing. So talk about the importance, and particularly someone that has been through what you've been through with circulation issues and that sort of thing. But talk about preparing yourself athletically.
Well, I think you have to stretch. You have to be hydrated. I'm a huge believer in drinking proper fluids. I just drink water. I eat apples, peaches, pears, anything on the golf course to keep your sugar level normal and level, because you never want to run out of gas on the last 3 or 4 holes, which I hear all the time, by the way. People say, gee, I'm getting tired, and I'm not, because I have prepared to not. I prepared as an athlete. So athletes prepare to succeed, athletic program. I'm not asking people, as you read in the book, to run a 4-minute mile or throw a 95-mile-an-hour Clayton Kershaw fastball. I don't. That's not what we're after. But if you think athletically and you stop thinking recreationally, there's a big, huge difference, and it'll allow you to be the best golfer you can be.
There you go. That's fantastic stuff. Bob, your site is absolutely wonderful, and the book is fantastic. Please tell our listeners again how they can find you online and then follow you over social media as well.
Okay, it's my website is Bob, and you mentioned it, BobGeismar.com, BOBGEIS as in Sam, MAR.com. And social media, pardon me, I don't do a whole lot of Twittering, but I do some radio blogging and a little bit of blogging, but they can always email me. I love emails, and I get back to everybody. It's bob@bobgeismar.com. And I get back to everybody. It may take me a day or so, but I do. And the book's available. It's on sale for under $10. They don't want to buy it. That's fine. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to get people interested in playing the best golf they can play. And I just appreciate you having me on the show.
It's so great having you. You got such a wonderful story. Thank you so much for taking time this morning, to be a part of the show. It was great having you. I hope you'll come back and join me again sometime, share more of your insights with us.
I'd love to, but before I let you go, you have just another second for me?
Sure.
Listening to Ian Baker-Finch, it's hard following that accent, that voice. So isn't he fabulous?
He really is.
And also, I got to say this. People talk about bucket lists. I finally got to go to Augusta in 2012. And if people are out there, if you get a chance to go, where you almost have a chance, but you got to push the pencil a little bit to get there. Please do it. There's nothing I've been all over America at millions of lots and lots of golf courses. I hear Bandon Dunes is fantastic. That's one I haven't been to yet. But Chris, is Augusta the best or not?
Oh, there's no question. It's, Bob, for everyone who listens to this show on a regular basis knows, it's my favorite place on the planet. If they told me you could pick me up and put me down anywhere on the planet, where would I want to get set down? It's Augusta National every single time.
I know, and it's one last thought. We arrived at Augusta. We had one of their $1 cheese biscuit egg sandwiches, for breakfast.
Yep.
Now I'm with my 2 grown sons, and I say, "Don't anybody move, okay? Am I really here, or am I watching this on television?" And I said, and then I heard the crack of a ball, and I saw Dustin Johnson on the first tee, and I said, "Yeah, I'm here. Let's go." Unbelievable.
That's right. Absolutely
Thanks
right.
for giving me that extra. It is just the greatest place on earth, and they don't leave anything to chance, do they, Chris?
No, they do not, and I couldn't agree with you more with that statement, Bob. It is my favorite place on the planet. Bob, again, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'd love to be on again anytime. You be good.
All right, you too, Bob. All the best to you and your family, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
You bet. Bye, Bob. Bob Geismar, again, bobgeismar.com. Great stuff. One Thought Golf, and it's worth a look. Go check it out online. All right, now back with me on the Seymour Putters guest line to answer more of your questions is 2003 PGA champion Shaun Micheel. Hey, Shaun, how are you?
Hi, Chris. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic. You?
I'm doing well. I'm just getting ready to go on a little trip with my family to Florida since I missed the cut yesterday here. So I'm reluctantly doing some duties before we depart.
And I was hoping really hard, Shaun, that cut line was going to move one stroke further down, so we'd get the privilege of watching you, up in Memphis over the next couple of days. But nothing wrong with the rounds you shot. What, back-to-back 71s?
Yeah, it's a little disappointing, I think, but I didn't hit the ball as well as I would have liked. I mean, it's a tough golf course. The greens are pretty small and they give you plenty of room to drive it, but the fairways aren't really that wide either. And so when you're in the Bermuda rough, it's difficult to really make a play into the green. There's a lot of forced carries, particularly on the back nine. And so I missed a lot of greens the first day, and I didn't have a lot of opportunities, but my short game was pretty good. And then yesterday, missed a few greens and actually chipped in on 4, and then came around and missed a fairway on 6 and made bogey, and then birdied 8, which was great to get me right back. And I really wasn't following the leaderboard. I kind of figured the cut was going to be about 1 over, and I got to 9 and I hit it right down the middle of the fairway, and I was in between clubs, and I hit a shot long, and I had wasn't an easy chip, but it's probably one I should get up and down 7 out of 10 times, and I kind of went underneath it and just got onto the green. I had about a 10-footer, and I missed it. So it was disappointing for a number of reasons. I think one, because I didn't really play like I would have liked, but the other is just when you have an opportunity to kind of close out, making the cut. I mean, the pressure exists there really for everybody, on cut line. When you're on the cut line, you got the pressure because you're not going to give yourself an opportunity to move up on the leaderboard on Saturday and Sunday if you don't make it. So there is pressure for those of those people that think that, what's it matter if you just miss one cut? I mean, it matters because if you miss the cut by 14 or you miss the cut by 1, it's the same thing. But mentally it's not, because when you're 14 over, you kind of give up. You kind of resign yourself to the fact that you're going to miss the cut and you might just be going through the motions. But when you're right on the cut line, I guarantee you're trying, and, there's a lot of pressure there. And I felt a little bit of that, I guess, just because it's important for me to make the cut when you're not exempt. when you're an exempt player and you got 3-4 years, and your exemption and you're just kind of going, it doesn't really, it's not as much importance. But when you don't have status like me, every dollar that you make moves you up into your category, which affects you for not only this year but for next year and the opportunities to play. So it was disappointing in a number of ways.
Yeah, and I think that's something that not everyone fully understands. And to your point about what's the importance of missing a cut, but for you as you're trying to get into more events and be eligible for more events, that's a big deal. And certainly we're rooting for you to the next go around that you make the cut, because we want to see you out there successful on the tour and building momentum, because what I think is going to be outstanding is when you get out on the Champions Tour.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of good things that I was doing over the last couple of days. I mean, my thought process was pretty good. I played to areas that I needed to give myself the best opportunity for par, because again, like I said, there's a lot of golf, there's a lot of holes that if you're not in the fairway, you can't attack the pins. So I thought very well around the golf course the last 2 days. I just wasn't as sharp off the tee as I had been, and I kind of keyed in on some things the last 10, 11 holes yesterday. But the lack of competition really hurts. It hurts me, and it just something I had to deal with, and so maybe there was a little bit more pressure for me to play well. And it wasn't because I was playing in front of my friends and family and those types of things like it normally does, because those are always there. But I think just knowing that I don't have many opportunities, that you have to take advantage. It's kind of like a guy for a company, and he's got really one opportunity to make a big sale, or he doesn't get to go to work. He doesn't get that job that he's really wanting. So the preparation was there. It just was a tough course, and conditions were difficult, but so I was a little bit disappointed that I kind of missed out for the play of the weekend.
Shaun, let's get into our mailbag for you. We've got a handful of questions here that folks have asked, and I want to get your thoughts on. One, right off the top, real quick, one of our listeners wants to know, what's your favorite course to play?
Oh, I love St. Andrews, the old course at St. Andrews. I mean, there's so many that stick out, but the history of the golf course, the home of golf, the town of St. Andrews, really it's all encompassing. Many would think I'd like Oak Hill, which I do. It's probably the most memorable golf course for me. Had more significance in my career. But just as far as just thinking of a golf course off the top of my head, I mean, I think of St. Andrews. Like I said, the town, the people, the smells. It's hard to kind of describe the smell. There's a sweet aroma that goes around that golf course with the heather, and I don't know what it is, but I think of that place right off the top of my head.
One of our listeners from up in Wisconsin writes and wants to know if they're going to get to see you at the PGA Championship up at Whistling Straits this year.
I am, yes. One of the great parts of being a PGA champion is that you have a pretty lengthy exemption. Is it 60 or 65? I don't really know. I probably won't be playing. I won't be playing at that point probably, but I'll be up there. And the U.S. Open is the only tournament, the only championship that doesn't give its champion a lifetime exemption. And U.S. Open gives you 10 years, which is surprising to a lot of people. You look at Lee Janzen, won 2 U.S. Opens, was qualifying a few years ago, and he qualified this year. Retief Goosen, same thing. I saw Retief the other day here. He was qualifying here in Memphis, and he won, I think 12 years ago was his last U.S. Open. So they do things a little bit differently, but really thankful to the PGA, and it's honoring its champions like that. And, they kind of let you decide when it's time to go out. And I think that's great, because all of us are smart enough to know that when the golf courses get to be too long, that it might be time to shut it down.
We've had folks continue to write in all the time questions about your health. And again, we got a couple this week about your shoulder and how's your shoulder feeling, and did it get hurt in a particular tournament, or was it just sort of wear and tear over time?
Yeah, I think it was just wear and tear over time. Because I haven't really. It was 7 years ago on the 8th of June, so we're just past the 7-year mark, and I still struggle with my shoulder. It was a really significant injury, and when you have something like that at 39 years of age, I mean, anybody that's had a labral tear with as close as it was to the bicep tendon and those types of things, just how difficult it is to recover from. But I don't really recall how exactly I got it injured. I do remember one thing that really stands out is at the end of 06, and I had a really good 06. I played well at Medina. I finished second in the PGA, and I finished second in the World Match Play in London. And so I got to 07, and it was at Bay Hill. And I hadn't really worked with my teacher in a few months. I hadn't I kind of never been someone that needed to have my teacher on a weekly basis. And you know what? And maybe I should have. Maybe I'd won a few more tournaments. But anyway, I remember going to Bay Hill, and I was warming up, and Matt, who I was working with at the time, Matt Killen, came up to me, and he was watching me hit balls, and he asked me if I was working with a new teacher, and I said, no. Why do you ask? And he said, well, your swing is a lot lower than it was when I had you, a few months ago. And I said, I don't know. I said, my shoulder's kind of not feeling great. I don't know if it just feels kind of weak or whatever. I mean, I think I just kind of strained it or something like that. So maybe that's what it is. And I kept on, and all of a sudden this popping sound started, and I played all of 07 and went to the doctor in 07. The doctor that I went to did an X-ray, and he didn't do an MRI. And it's my own fault for not being a great advocate for myself, because I should have pushed a little bit more for an MRI. But not being a doctor, I didn't think much about it, and I figured, these orthopedics know what they're doing. But so I continued to play, and that really got worse and worse. Part for me was that I was in kind of the last few years of my exemption for the PGA Championship. And knowing the way medical exemptions work and all those sorts of things, I felt like I kind of needed to keep playing. And all the major championships, because if I shut it down, I was done. I wasn't going to be exempt for the majors anymore and those types of things. So I kept playing. And it was at Jack and Barbara Nicklaus's tournament. I spoke to them probably for 30 minutes on my shoulder at the Memorial in 2008. And Mr. Nicklaus asked me, he says, are you competitive? And I said, absolutely not. I said, Jack, I said, look at my scores. I'm struggling, but I just feel this sense of this obligation to my family and to my to the PGA Tour and to myself to keep playing. And he just kind of chuckled and just said, I think you're done. I mean, Dr. Andrews told you what to do, and you need to follow his advice. So I did that, and that was that because I canceled the surgery a month before that. I just wanted to keep playing, and that's when he and Barbara both told me. They kind of shook their heads and just told me to shut it down. So that's what I did, and but my shoulder still hurts to this day. So I think at 46 years of age, things aren't getting any looser. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I can attest to that too, my friend.
Yeah.
Shaun, we got another question about your health, and the listener writes, Shaun, my father recently had bypass surgery. What did your doctors tell you about heart health and playing golf?
Well, I was a little nervous about that in the beginning, to be honest with you. After I had my first heart catheterization, which was February of 2014, instead of doing the stenting then or the bypass then, it was going to be their determination as to what procedure I was going to have. I started a regimen of medication that was obviously going to help, my heart rate, the amount of blood that my heart needed to pump. And about 2 weeks after I had the procedure done, I got on an airplane to go to South America. And I went to Santiago, Chile. They weren't too happy with me making that decision because
I bet not.
Yeah, look, Santiago is an extremely advanced place. I love that city. And so I wasn't so worried about that as I was kind of the airplane ride. Unfortunately, I had a couple of weeks between the procedure and this tournament to kind of see how I was going to feel. And I felt good. And they were like, okay, well, if this happens to you, this is what you need to do type of thing. But as far as any type of major diet, I've kind of felt like I've always eaten fairly well. But they didn't go to the extremes of putting me on any type of Mediterranean diet. I mean, salads. I try to eat a salad a day. Olive oils. I try to stay away from all the heart unhealthy things that the prepackaged foods and things like that. But I think everybody's different, and what I've come to find out is that every doctor, every cardiologist has a different thought or a different philosophy on treating their patients. My doctor seems to have a very conservative approach to things because another friend of mine is a cardiologist, and he questions some of the medication I was taking. He just asked me why, and he says, well, I don't know if you need that. So it's tough to be a patient, really, because there are so many different, and again, I use the word philosophy. Each doctor thinks something different. I think they all have the same materials and stuff to read from, but they take away different things. So that's confusing to the patient, and it's difficult. But I'm a huge proponent in your own advocacy as a patient. You have to take responsibility for the way you're feeling, and to not feel so funny or to feel like you're a hypochondriac if you continue to go back to the doctor, because only you know your doctor. And it's the same thing that happened with my shoulder. I knew something was wrong. I wasn't quite sure what it was. I just didn't do what I needed to do to take care of myself. So everybody's different, and it is kind of up to your doctor to work out a plan and those types of things to ensure that you get a long, healthy life. I mean, look, the procedures have gotten so much better. The stenting procedures, the drug-eluting stents that they use, those types of devices have really kept people alive a lot longer. But it is definitely something that I think about on a daily basis, and that's trying to make sure that I eat right, because I definitely want to be around for a long time.
There you go. John, a couple more, we'll let you go. First, sort of along the same sort of lines, but you talk about not playing regularly, right? Or a listener writes in and say, hey, since you don't get to play regularly, one of the things that people probably don't realize is how much walking it takes to get from, pro-ams on Tuesday through a final round on Sunday. When you don't get to play as much, how do you stay in shape to handle the walk?
Yeah, I mean, I do the typical things, I get out there and I walk and work out a little bit at the gym and those types of things to stay in shape. To be honest, I stretch a lot. I think that's as much as anything to playing. Look, it helps to be in great shape, have great lung capacity, and that I've never been a big gym rat, and I try to stretch as much as I can and do as much physical activity as I want to. I have a karate instructor that I work with on occasion, and he put me through the ring, if you will. And other than that, just being outside, practicing, running around with my kids, just normal activities that aren't necessarily dedicated to being in great shape. But I think that running around with my kids on the soccer field and playing basketball every day does enough for me to keep me in shape, because I've always been in pretty good shape anyway.
There you go. So we can't let you go without getting your thoughts on the U.S. Open. Who are some of your peers that you think we should keep our eyes on who have an opportunity to win next week?
I don't know anything about the golf course. I mean, typically when you think of a U.S. Open, you think of really tight fairways, really firm and fast greens, deep rough. So you're going to trend towards the guys that hit it straight. I mean, length, of course, that's always an advantage at every golf course you play. But length, paired together with accuracy, it goes a long way. And this course apparently is a little bit more benign off the tee. I don't know if it's a second shot golf course like Augusta National is, but from what I'm reading and hearing on the Golf Channel, it is. Putting is always key. It's hard to say. I mean, McIlroy being number one in the world, I mean, he's going to make the headlines because that's, he's won one and he's the best player in the world this time. But it's hard to say, really. I mean, everybody's pulling for Phil. It'd be great to see him get the fourth leg of the Grand Slam and knock that one off. And I think his game, I mean, Lord knows he's got the best short game going. And so if you're playing at a golf course that your driving accuracy is not necessarily the most important part of the week, then I think he's always going to be right there. It's just I don't know anything about the golf course, so it's hard to say. I mean, I would definitely start with those two guys. If Rory being the number one player in the world and understanding how to play a high pressure game, and then of course Phil with his creativity. And he hasn't lost any of that, and that's something that's very surprising to me at his age. I mean, he's just a little bit younger than I am, but at some point you think that would go, but it hasn't for him. So I look for him to be right there.
All right. Well, Shaun, thank you so much for joining us again this week. We'll continue to collect questions, and as your schedule allows, we look forward to having you continue to be part of the show and answer the questions from our listeners. You're fantastic, and you're one of our favorites. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day to be a part of the show again this week.
You're welcome, Chris. I always enjoy. You know that.
I appreciate that. Take care, Shaun. Enjoy the trip with your family.
All right.
We look forward to catching up with you as we can.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris.
All right, take care, Shaun. Shaun Micheel. Again, send us your questions over Twitter. You can find me at CT Mascaro. Send me your questions for Shaun. Go to our Facebook page, Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, and send us your questions there as well. We really appreciate it. And while you're out and about and you're on our Facebook page, if you want an opportunity, and I got the driver sitting right here, folks. Our friends over at the PGA Tour Superstore have given us a new tailor-made Aero driver signed by Dustin Johnson. So we're going to give that thing away next week after at the end of the U.S. Open week. And the way to win it is to tell us your favorite U.S. Open memory and why it is such. So go to our Facebook page, Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro. Go on there and tell us your favorite U.S. Open memory and why, and you'll be in there for a chance to win this fantastic driver. It's a beauty, folks. All right, it's time for me to put a bow on this one. Before we go, I also want to give a shout-out today to our good friends over at golfballs.com. If you're looking for a great gift idea for Dad this Father's Day, check out the wide variety of gift options they have at golfballs.com. You can get Dad's name, initials, favorite saying printed on his favorite brand of golf balls or on some tees, or how about a personalized hat or towel? Make Dad's Day special and memorable for him for a long time with personalized golf items for golfballs.com. Golfballs.com is the online leader in golf customization. Before we close up shop, I also want to remind you one more time about the great book that our friends Dave Stockton and Dave Stockton Jr. have out called Own Your Own Game. So we're getting ready physically. We're out on the golf course, but remember, so much, and we heard about it today, is so much of the game is played in that 5-inch space between our ears. Get your mind right. In his latest book, Mr. Stockton lets you know how to use your mind to play winning golf. Own Your Game recreates the experience of riding 18 holes with Dave Stockton at one of his highly sought-after corporate outings and draws from his experience as a champion both on the regular tour and the senior tour, plus now as a revered coach. He shows you how to think better, stay calmer, execute more consistently, and most importantly, how to enjoy the game more thoroughly. Go to StocktonGolf.com to get your copy, and for a couple extra dollars, we'll even autograph it for you. All right, folks, my sincere thanks to Peter Kessler, Ian Baker-Finch, Bob Geismar, and Shaun Micheel for joining me today and making today's show so much fun to be a part of. Please also check out our sister show, Thursday Night Tailgate, with me, my co-host Bob Lazari, and our announcer Joe Olajanusa. That show airs live every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can hear it live on Blog Talk Radio as well as Armed Forces Radio. Plus, on Friday nights, you can hear us from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time on BoostRadioNetwork.com. That show, like this one, is also available on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player.fm, and SoundCloud as well. On Thursday Night Tailgate, we're joined every week by legends from around the NFL and the CFL. We are official partners with the NFL Alumni Association. So please, check out both shows as well on Facebook. Give us a like. That's important to us, too. You can find us online. This show, nextonthet.net and ThursdayNightTailgate.com. You can stream or download any of our archive episodes for free, plus keep up to date with who our future guests are going to be on both shows. All right, folks, thanks again for choosing to listen to this show today. We really appreciate you very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.